While Americans pay more for Japanese cars, Japan may be preparing a financial move that could shake the U.S. economy. The U.S. has raised tariffs on Japanese automobile parts, especially in the electric vehicle industry. A 25% tariff has driven up Toyota, Honda, and Nissan prices, reducing their market competitiveness. According to the Japan Automobile Manufacturers Association, Japanese car sales in the U.S. dropped by 7% in early 2025. Meanwhile, U.S. automakers like Ford and General Motors benefit from protectionist policies. Higher prices reduce consumer purchasing power and harm Japanese automakers, increasing production costs and cutting profits. Japan is not just responding with words, it has begun selling off large amounts of U.S. Treasury bonds. As the second largest U.S. creditor, Japan holds over $1.1 trillion in bonds. In February 2025, Japan sold $30 billion worth, weakening the dollar and raising interest rates, creating financial pressure. This high-risk move shows Japan's willingness to use financial influence against U.S. economic policies. Additionally, Japan is shifting car production out of the U.S. to Mexico and Southeast Asia to bypass tariffs. Toyota and Honda are heavily investing in factories in these regions, where labor costs are lower and tax policies are favorable. This strategy not only impacts the U.S., but also makes international investors cautious about purchasing U.S. bonds. If the U.S. continues imposing restrictions, Japan may escalate retaliation by limiting the export of solid-state batteries, crucial for electric vehicles. Japan, led by Toyota and Honda, dominates this technology. Blocking exports would hinder U.S. EV development at a time when Washington aims to expand domestic production. Japan could also impose retaliatory tariffs on U.S. imports, affecting consumer goods, machinery, and food. While maintaining ties with the U.S., Japan is expanding trade with the EU to reduce dependency. The EU-Japan trade agreements help Japan counteract U.S. tariff policies while growing its automotive industry. Japan is increasing EV production in Europe, securing its global competitiveness. Will Japan force the U.S. to change tax policies? Or will Washington take a hard stance, risking financial turmoil? Stay tuned. Yesterday, President Trump addressed stock market turmoil caused by his tariff agenda. However, Japan took a bold step, selling off large amounts of U.S. Treasury bonds, an unprecedented move. Japan has long been a major U.S. creditor, stabilizing the dollar by holding Treasury bonds. However, recent reports show Japan has sold tens of billions in bonds, raising concerns about its motives. The reason lies in escalating trade tensions. The U.S. imposed high tariffs on Japanese EVs from Toyota, Honda, and Nissan, prompting Tokyo to retaliate financially. If Japan continues selling U.S. bonds, the dollar and global economy could suffer. Washington aims to develop its EV industry to compete with China and Europe, supporting Tesla, GM, and Ford while taxing imports. However, Japan leads in hybrid and EV technology. Toyota pioneered hybrids, Nissan mass-produced EVs, and Honda expands rapidly. Japan views tariffs as unjust, using bond sell-offs to pressure Washington. Reducing U.S. Treasury holdings signals that if the U.S. continues protectionism, Japan will stop supporting its debt. The key question: how long can Washington endure this pressure? Is Japan reducing its dependence on the dollar? Global finance is shifting. China promotes the yuan, Russia cut U.S. bonds post-sanctions, and Asian nations like South Korea and India diversify assets. Now Japan may follow. Tokyo could redirect capital into Asia, strengthening ties with China, South Korea, and ASEAN, accelerating the decline of U.S. dollar dominance. If Japan continues selling bonds, how will the U.S. respond? Ignoring Japan's warning could hurt the dollar, raising import costs, fueling inflation, and increasing U.S. borrowing costs. Financial instability could trigger a global domino effect. The U.S. must choose: compromise by reducing EV tariffs or risk financial and trade repercussions. Both carry major risks. What will Washington do next? This may be just the beginning. Meanwhile, Canada, a longtime U.S. energy partner, has halted a $13 billion oil export pipeline, shocking Washington. Canada, the largest U.S. energy supplier, stopped oil and gas exports, causing fuel, food, and electricity prices to surge, disrupting millions of American lives. The aviation industry faces rising fuel costs, and manufacturing struggles with soaring energy expenses. For years, the U.S. imposed heavy tariffs on Canadian goods, assuming Canada wouldn't retaliate. That assumption is now shattered. Canada warned of this outcome, yet Washington ignored it. Now Canada has pivoted, halting oil exports to the U.S. while securing long-term deals with China and India, the world's largest energy markets. This strategic shift reduces Canada's reliance on the U.S., instead supplying Europe and Asia, which seek alternatives to Russian energy. With Canada's hydroelectric supply cut, states like New York, California, and Michigan risk blackouts. The U.S. not only faces an energy crisis but also loses its strategic position in global energy competition. Who will replace Canada's energy supply? With Europe and Asia stepping in, Canada's energy flow is shifting away from North America, reshaping the global energy landscape. Especially during the winter months, electricity prices have soared, and some regions are even considering implementing peak-hour usage restrictions to avoid overloads. Major industries such as automobile, steel, and food production are starting to cut production due to rising energy costs. This not only impacts the economy but also threatens tens of thousands of jobs, particularly in energy-dependent sectors. Many businesses are facing severe profit declines, with some even closing down certain production facilities. As a result, Americans are witnessing significant changes in their daily lives, from rising prices to shrinking job opportunities. The U.S. is facing a challenging energy winter. Gas, oil, electricity, airline tickets, and goods have all surged in price. Families and businesses are shouldering unprecedented inflation, making everything more expensive than ever before. The electricity and fuel systems, once reliant on Canada's supply, are now paralyzed, rendering Washington's efforts nearly futile. These events are forcing the U.S. economy to confront a significant shock, with the outcome difficult to predict. How many options does the U.S. have left to navigate this crisis? Can Washington escape the energy crisis before it escalates into a full-blown economic disaster? Elon Musk was abruptly cut off by Fox News right in the middle of his speech at CPAC. Once a national icon with a +24 approval rating in 2017, Musk has now plummeted to 19 in 2025, marking the beginning of a rapid decline in his public image. At the 2025 CPAC conference, Musk took the stage holding a chainsaw, yes, a real one, symbolizing his call to cut down the bloated federal government. He criticized federal workers earning $50,000 a year, accusing them of being ineffective, underpaid, and still unable to afford health insurance or housing. On stage at CPAC, wielding a chainsaw and mocking federal employees earning modest wages, Musk then claimed he had received death threats for trying to do what he believed was right for American taxpayers. However, just over 6 minutes into his speech, Fox News suddenly cut the live feed. A shocking move from a network that has traditionally supported both Musk and conservative politics. Days later, Musk returned in a cabinet meeting with Donald Trump, this time as a policy advisor. He announced what he called a success, uncovering financial fraud in the Small Business Administration. His claim: "We discovered $330 million in loans issued to children under 11 years old. One of them was a 9-month-old baby who received $100,000. No evidence was presented, but the narrative reinforced Musk's image as a government wastebuster. According to a CNN poll, Musk's approval rating has collapsed from +24 in 2017 to 19 in early 2025. Among Democrats, it dropped from +35 to 91, a staggering decline of over 120 points. Independents flipped from +17 to 7. Only Republicans showed growth, from +18 to +51. But that wasn't enough to salvage his national image. As dramatic as this shift in perception was, the damage wasn't just political. Tesla's U.S. sales dropped significantly in 2024. Registrations fell 5% by the first quarter of 2025, followed by another 11% decline. Meanwhile, Hyundai, Rivian, and Ford posted strong growth. The key issue? Only 20% of EV buyers in America are Republicans. By aligning himself with partisan politics, Musk is losing the broader market that once admired him as a non-political tech visionary. Then came a new controversy. Musk posted on X that $50 million worth of condoms were sent to Hamas. The claim was quickly debunked. The shipment actually went to Mozambique as part of an HIV prevention initiative. When questioned, Musk responded, "Well, first of all, things that I say will be incorrect and should be corrected. So nobody's going to bat 1,000. In the same cabinet meeting, Musk proposed a controversial budget cap for the National Institutes of Health, NIH. He wanted to limit indirect costs to 15%, arguing that NIH's overhead was too high. However, NIH responded with data, stating that every $1 in funding generates $2.46 in economic benefit, contributing $93 billion annually to the U.S. economy. Katie Britt, the senator from Alabama, firmly opposed the proposal. Once an ally of Musk, she publicly spoke out, saying, "Don't gut the NIH's budget. If we trade it away, we're sacrificing the future of medical research in America." So what's really happening with Elon Musk? This isn't just about his personal downfall. It's a full-blown stress test of how far technology leaders can push into public policy and where society draws the line between entrepreneurial ambition and political power. What's happening to Musk could be a preview of what's coming next. Meanwhile, China has responded aggressively to Trump's new tariffs. not only targeting American agricultural products, but also threatening critical high-tech industries and vital minerals. How will these strikes affect the U.S. economy and global markets under Trump's leadership? Let's break it down. China has chosen U.S. agricultural products as the first target in this new trade war. Items like soybeans, corn, and chicken are now facing heavy tariffs. Agriculture is a strategic sector in the U.S. economy, particularly in the Midwestern states that heavily supported President Trump. In 2024, the U.S. exported nearly $22 billion worth of soybeans to China. These new tariffs could push American farmers into financial crisis, even leading to bankruptcies. If China continues imposing tariffs, the impact won't be limited to farmers. It will ripple through the economy, affecting everything from consumer goods prices to export values. Markets will be disrupted, businesses will struggle to maintain supply chains, and consumers will face higher prices. This could lead to a negative economic spiral, reducing the competitiveness of American industries on the global stage. However, agriculture is just the beginning of China's retaliation. The country is also targeting high-tech industries and crucial minerals like rare earth elements, which are essential for manufacturing semiconductors and military equipment. If China tightens its control over these exports, the U.S. will face major challenges in maintaining production of advanced technologies, particularly in the defense sector. American tech companies will be forced to contend with rising costs and severe supply chain disruptions. China's restrictions could impact the production of smartphones, computers, and even military gear, slowing manufacturing and causing widespread economic damage. If the U.S. cannot find alternative sources, these industries will pay a heavy price. This could weaken America's competitiveness in the global technology race, leaving it behind other major powers. Trump has made it clear that he will not back down. The administration believes these tariffs are necessary to address the trade imbalance and China's unfair practices. However, this strategy carries significant risks for the U.S. economy. American markets may face sudden price increases on consumer goods, from smartphones to cars. Companies will struggle to maintain supply chains and keep product prices low. High-tech products could become more expensive, directly impacting consumers and potentially driving inflation. This could reduce purchasing power, increase pressure on small businesses, and create a cycle of rising prices. Moreover, if this situation persists, economic instability could lead to increased unemployment, reduced consumer spending, and a slowing economic recovery. These tariff policies will have widespread effects on all levels of American society, from consumers to investors. China still holds a major economic weapon: the control of rare earth minerals. These materials are crucial for producing semiconductors and military equipment. If China continues to restrict exports, the U.S. will struggle to maintain production of cutting-edge technologies, dealing a blow to both the tech and defense industries. American tech companies will be forced to seek alternative sources, which will be costly and cause major production delays.